Okay, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located. My name is Bill Graham, and I declare this Dare to Be Great Rotary eClub meeting on 14 September 2024 to be open. Today, we're going to be continue our discussion of the last couple of weeks about artificial intelligence and education. In particular, we're looking at education for the youngest children, if you would. Children, does it make sense? And we've seen in the past there are some parents and some daycare centers. They just plop their children in front of a TV set and hope the TV set entertains the kids and they'll be quiet and won't get into trouble. We know that that is not a very good thing to do, and the outcomes are not great. We know even educational programs like Sesame Street do not really have that deep an impact on a lot of children. So does the idea to go and put your child together with an artificial intelligence, does that make sense? What are we thinking of when we do that? Well, one of the things we have to take into consideration is we know the number one cause of education failure, especially in developed countries. Developing countries, for the most part, don't even get a chance because so many of their children, especially in remote rural areas and in impoverished areas, never get the chance to go to school. But even where in developed countries like the United States and Europe, where all children go to school, we know that there's a very high failure rate. In fact, among 10-year-olds in Germany, a year ago, May, the papers were full of the reports that 1 out of every 4 10-year-olds or fourth graders in Germany cannot effectively read. And the study of the national testing here in the United States earlier this year reported that 40% of the 4-year-olds in the United States cannot read to expectations. So the challenge that we're looking at is what's causing this? It's very easy to say, oh, they don't have the schools, they don't have the same quality schools, the teachers are not as good, and they don't have the resources because of they're in poor neighborhoods. But studies show that that's typically not the case. The quality of instruction is not that different in impoverished areas of the United States as they are in wealthy areas. The difference is the teachers have to teach differently because the children are not able to follow the same materials necessarily. There's studies, for example, by the Bloomberg Foundation that studied in Providence, Rhode Island. They went and put microphones on all the babies so that they could track what is happening to children between when they're born and when they start kindergarten. What's the difference? And what they found was that children from working in welfare class families hear as many as 30 million fewer words by the time they're, I think it was 3 years old. Now that's the worst case, but it's not unusual for children from those backgrounds when they start kindergarten, they're starting at 1 to 2 years behind in mental maturity and verbal vocabulary skills. And then once they're in school, our drive for equality says, well, you now have to treat all children the same. So we have all the same curriculum. The only difference is one set of children from the middle and upper class families is prepared to be able to follow that curriculum. And those from the working and welfare class families do not typically have the preparation to be able to catch up. So we see here, and a good example is the country of Finland, where they went and made an effort to say, okay, well, what's going on wrong? We know the problem is that working in welfare class families, either the parents are having to do 2, 3 jobs, they don't have time to help their children, or they don't have the education themselves. Maybe they have a migrant background, so that the problem is they don't speak English at home, or they don't speak whatever the main language in that country or school is at home, and as a result, um, their language understanding is not that great themselves, or their vocabulary in the school's language is not that great because they never hear that language normally. So the Finland decided, okay, we have to level the playing field before they start school, because they can't catch up if the schools are designed to treat everybody the same. So they started preschool as early as 6 months of age, and and they did that with very high quality. I think here up until age 2, there's only 2 students to a teacher. And the teachers have to be very qualified. I think they have to have a master's degree to be a teacher in a preschool. And even by the time that child reaches age 6, there's only 7 students to a teacher. So the quality of the support and the learning support and the educational support during those early formative years is very, very high. And it's equal for all the children because almost every child goes to preschool. So they're all getting the same early education. So they are able to begin school at the same level. And then the schools are able to continue. The net result has been that for the last 15 to 20 years, Finland has been the shining star of educational achievement among the developed countries. It's only, I think, the last year or two, Estonia, which is right next door to Finland, has matched or slightly exceeded where Finland is at. But those countries are still so far ahead of all the rest of the developed countries because they level the playing field before that child reaches kindergarten or first grade. Now, in the last week, we talked about whether AI could be good for education for university students and secondary school students, and because there's such a fear among educators that, well, students are only going to use that to avoid learning. They're going to go and say to the ChatGPT or AI, hey, go write my essays for me, go do my research for me, go do all my homework for me. And they're not going to learn because they're not applying themselves. But we talked about how AI could actually be used to evaluate the communication skills, the critical thinking, the creative thinking of students at those levels, and coach them. In other words, evaluate their interaction by having them fully engage with AI for everything related to education and learning and research and so forth. And therefore, the AI is able to use the interaction between themselves and the student to be able to evaluate how well the student is picking up those critical things for life and how well they're being prepared to become a lifelong learner, because when they're 30 years old, there's no teacher there telling them, now next do this. So, but the question here, and I think here in the discussion that we had last week, I think everybody was pretty much in agreement that AI could play a very significant role, because the teacher, the human teacher, who is maybe facing 20, 30, or even 50 children, is not able to look into the head of how those children are thinking and reacting all the time. They're always having to look at secondary things like the essays that the child wrote. Is that a good essay? Are they showing good communication skills? Are they showing deeper thinking? But the AI is, on a one-to-one basis, able to judge those kinds of things. So during this last week, I had some intensive discussions with artificial intelligence about what it might be able to do for those younger children, so that we could level the playing field. Because, as I say, if you come from a migrant background, or a family that your parents did not have much education, uh, you're not going to get that at home from the parents. And especially if the parents are having to do 2 or 3 jobs, and they're never there. Or if you're in an impoverished neighborhood, you might be going to a daycare, but those are a daycare that basically just warehouse the children. They just keep quiet, don't get in trouble. They don't really have the resources to be able to do anything from an educational perspective. So the question is, can AI make a difference that a TV, even educational TV shows, can't do? And so we started taking a look at, well, what's the evolution? What's happened to AI? Where has AI come that might make some of these things be a difference? Well, there was just an announcement for Alexa. First of all, I just want to know, is there anybody on the call here who is not familiar with Amazon Alexa? Please, I'm assuming everybody knows Amazon Alexa?
I know of her. I've never tried her.
Okay. Well, Amazon Alexa is a device. It's what they call an intelligent speaker, if you would, loudspeaker that you can talk to, and you can ask it questions and do things like that, just like you might be able to do to ChatGPT, or going into Google search, and you ask for something, and it will just talk back to you and respond back to you. Well, there's the Echo Show is an Amazon device that, in addition to having the speaker and microphone so you can talk to it, also has a display screen and a camera, so that it can see who it's talking to. And so when you have the conversation, you can see what's on the screen, and the screen can see you. In addition, it has got a swivel function, so that you can, for example, have your big family dinner there, and if somebody can't be present at the table, they can be present on the screen using either Zoom or Skype or any of the other video conversation tools that are available out there. And but with the difference that it will turn to who it's speaking to. So it will turn and see what's going on around the table. Well, this past week, or maybe it was the week before, Amazon announced that they are adding really full artificial intelligence to this tool in the form of Claude, and so it will be able to hold much more intelligent conversations with people. And on top of that, we have, from companies like HeyGen and from Synthesia, the avatars that they've created enable you to have a conversation with an avatar. So right now, for example, I could turn around and tell you, this has been fun, but do you realize I'm not a real person? I'm just an avatar. and you could actually have that situation happen. So the idea here is that you can have the sense I'm having a conversation with a real person that's just on the other side of some glass, and but it's an avatar. It's an artificial intelligence. And we have a thing coming here that a number of people already have access to with ChatGPT called advanced voice, which enables the conversation to be in real time, just like we're doing it live here, even though you're speaking to an AI. So no latency, no gaps of silence in the sequence there, which is going to make that conversation with artificial intelligence even more realistic. And we have the capability that you can have the avatar be anybody. In other words, it can look like anybody you want. It can sound like anybody you want and have the mannerisms, the speaking mannerisms of whoever you want. Even the hand movements can be such that they are whatever that person's typical hand motions would be, because we now can do full body avatars. So, and then there's another feature that was presented in May called live video. And what live video does is it means the AI, not only can it recognize facial recognition, the person that it's speaking to, without having to be told who that is, but it can also see everything that's going on. So if you're having that dinner on the table, and you're talking to this avatar, the avatar might say, "Oh, that turkey looks really good. By the way, how did the string beans taste?" Whatever. So you can now have this conversation where the avatar can see. And one of the demonstrations that was done in May showed Sal Khan, the founder of Khan Academy, with his son, and the artificial intelligence was asking his son some questions about geometry and about, I think it was specifically about a triangle. It was looking at a triangle, and it was asking him questions about the triangle, and it was able to detect if he was pointing at something or if he uh, uh, drew a line or whatnot. It knew what he did. Or there was two people playing that what is it, rock scissors paper game with the fingers and the fist and whatever, and it was able to see who won and what was going on in the game. So now let's take a look and say, if you put all this together, let's say we've got now this device that is mobile, or at least able to turn and see everything in its environment, and perhaps with multiple cameras and microphones around a room, let's say in a daycare center. It's able to know everything that's going on in that room at any time. And by the way, that's not that crazy, because in Japan, they have they have a thing called I think it's Learning 360 or something like that, where they have classrooms that do have cameras all around the classrooms, and it's able to detect which students are understanding what the teacher is saying and which ones are not. So in other words, it's able to go and read from the facial expressions of the students here the degree of comprehension. So this really isn't that far out. So imagine this device, this swivel device that is able to take on any persona, that is able to have a conversation about literally anything, and it can see everything around it and hear everything around it. Uh, so this, let's stop here and just sort of take stock. Can everybody imagine this device that maybe looks like your grandmother, that's talking to you? Can you imagine that device being existent here within a few months, 6 months from now? let's say such devices are readily available. Can everybody imagine that? Or anybody want to challenge that thought?
Well, no, I'm not going to challenge that thought because it's already happening.
Yes, exactly. The pieces are not fully put together there. We see on advanced voice from ChatGPT. I'm still waiting, but they're promising I'll have it before the end of the year. And live video with advanced voice. They already demonstrated that in early May. Google also demonstrated it. They have a different name, obviously, for their product, but they're racing for the same thing. Yes, Amar.
Uh, thank you. Will. Actually, I was using Alexa, I think 10 years before, the basic, the first gadget. And I used to ask Alexa, what is the capital of USA? So Alexa would tell me. It's as simple like queries. When I was in Seattle, USA with my son, 8 years before, there were different, for example, when I used to have my in the sitting room, I used to say, Alexa, play this song. And Alexa used to play that song. So Alexa is the old technology now. But I think what you have just said, that the use of AI for Alexa is going to be a game changer.
Mhm.
Because then I think the grandmother example you have given very nicely, that we can, well, it's very important that we have to restore our old values. And in country like Pakistan, we have a great value of grandparents from the maternal side, from the paternal side. So I think this is going to be a real game changer, Alexa. And I would like to definitely order one Alexa, which is AI based now. So I'll request my son to send one to me. And once I go through it, then I'll talk to you. Okay?
Yeah, wait a couple of months. Wait a couple of months.
Okay.
It
Okay.
should be. I think they're saying October, an October release. That they'll be
Okay.
coming out with this. I forget the name, Alexa recognition or something like that.
Okay.
But I'll be posting when it becomes available and some videos that demonstrate its use. But
But
that is with Echo View.
my question to you now, after this brief background, that things are moving so fast, that in developing countries, which you are talking about right now, they are very behind because they are facing financial problems, they are facing social problems, they are facing number of problems. So the technology is going with a such speed that when we are unable to go from point A to B, technology goes to D and F. So how we can, this is very important for me to understand. People like you and maybe like me also, we understand these things, but due to our age, we are not into hands-on things. For hands-on things, we have to rely on youth. And you know my humble effort for 20 hours a day. Trust you me, Bill, 20 hours a day. I keep on busy. So I would like to have your candid comments on it. That in our lifetime, can we make up this difference or not? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things we have to stop is thinking that this is a competition. The idea of it's man against machine, because it's not. As I've said many times, the word artificial intelligence, or the name artificial intelligence, is a misnomer. Not so much because of the word artificial, but because of the word intelligence. There's really no intelligence to it. It's really the knowledge and experience of single humans versus the knowledge and experience of all the collection of humans today and in the past. Plus, now more and more, all the observations that various devices or make around the world, and so uh, we have to figure out not how to compete, but how to leverage these tools. And I want to bring out an example here. I mentioned the problem that many young people have that are growing up in a household where maybe their family has not had that great an opportunity to have education themselves. And so maybe your grandmother never went to school or never had an opportunity. But the AI version of your grandmother can be the equivalent of a PhD graduate here, a doctor, because we have now the persona of your grandmother with the entire knowledge of humanity behind her. And so this opens the door that the avatar version of your grandmother can guide her grandchildren through the learning process. So you've got that bond to the person you're familiar with being combined with the knowledge. And the knowledge, we had an event just the day before yesterday. OpenAI announced a new version of ChatGPT. It's ChatGPT 01. And 01 has reasoning. And this reasoning reasoning means how do you approach a problem, how you think it through. So where we had until now, all of the AIs, they're known for hallucinating. They're known for errors. They're known they can't do math correctly. They just go out and look at all this past data and take a guess. Well, this is what the collective knowledge out there would indicate makes a good answer. But the new version has something called chain of thought built into it, which means it goes and it analyzes what it's being asked to do or respond to, and it thinks about it and breaks it down into all the steps. And along the way, you can actually go out, by the way, and if you have to have the paid version of ChatGPT, but if you got the paid version, you can use this immediately. I've actually even tried it myself. And you can ask a question and it gives you an answer. And towards the top, it says you can actually click on a link that will show you all the reasoning that it went through. And so your simple question, which ChatGPT 4.0 might just give an answer to before you almost finish typing, GPT 01 might take 20 or 30 seconds, a half a minute. And you're thinking, it's not doing anything. It's just looping around, not doing anything. It's thinking. And you can actually then, when it displays its answer, you can ask it, well, why did you come up with that answer? And it will show you all the steps it went through in its thinking. And what I found fascinating is that as it's going through, it says, okay, you want to do this, you want to do that. We know this information, we know that information. And then it will all of a sudden say, idea. Maybe I need to look at it this way. And then a little later, it might say, alternate idea. Maybe it could be that way. And then it'll form a hypothesis. And then it will check the hypotheses to see if it's correct or false. And it goes through this whole sequence like that. And it makes almost zero mistakes. There's so many of the things that the artificial intelligence until now was not able to do, this version can do. And they went and compared it to the ChatGPT 4.0 that everybody was saying, hey, this is so good, of just 3 days ago. And it's not like it's a little better. It's like 4 and 5 times better in its ability to do math, science, to do program coding, problem solving. It can do crossword puzzles, which regular AI couldn't do, because that's an iterative process. As you figure out a couple of words, the letters that you put in on the opposite, if you put in some horizontal words, some of those letters will now give you hints on the right answers for the vertical words and so forth. So it's an iterative process. AI couldn't do that before. Now it can. So the examples of what it was able to solve and come up with are mind-boggling, except it takes time. But the interesting thing was here, when they compared it to the best, there's a math Olympiad in the world, where they take the best students in the world and they compete for crazy math problems that most of us probably couldn't even understand what the question is. And these students do this, and they had to take that exam, and it came up. It's among the top most intelligent 500 people in the world with regards to math. They did a similar thing with, I think it was program coding, and the same thing. It's like 5 times better than ChatGPT 4.0 was. And then they compared it to the sciences, looking at people with PhDs. And it outscored almost all of the best PhDs in the world in their respective subjects. So we are already at the stage where not 90%. Let's see. I think the PhD students was like 68% scored something on some evaluation, and the new GPT-01 scored a 76 or something, which is significant. That's almost a 10% better than what the PhD people were able to do. But we have to remember, the current AI that we have is the worst it's ever going to be. It's only going to get better. So we have to start realizing here that we are just getting more and more closer to what Amar was talking about, where the AI is going to run away from us. So we have to figure out how we can hang on to the coattails, and we don't just totally become irrelevant and get lost in that process. But at any rate, so we've got these intelligence factors coming up, and this idea of chain of thought. So this opens the door for new things that we can do with things like education, because the AI is now able to, in its conversation, judge our intelligence, judge our creative thinking, judge our critical thinking, and it's able to coach us how to be better in all those things. So I'm going to go switch over to my PowerPoint here on dealing with young children. What could this mean for dealing with young children? And this is so important, because we're seeing in the United States, we've got now 4 states in the United States that have banned cell phones in schools all the way through high school. We have a whole bunch more states saying, stop it. We've got teachers saying, I don't want any of my students using artificial intelligence. That has got to be one of the stupidest things I can imagine here. You know, it should be under the category of child abuse, because what we are doing is, instead of showing young people how to be independent learners and to take advantage of the tools that are available to them, we're trying to protect the teacher. The teacher is sort of saying, hey, you know what? I don't want to change the ways I do things. I'm less interested of whether my students are learning and able to accomplish great things, that they're able to project their imaginations and their ideas into reality. No, I want to keep my life simple and do exams and do what I did for the last 20 years. So we've got to be able to show people what is possible to the benefit of children's education using AI, so that we can counter this knee-jerk reaction of, technology's bad. So first thing here, I've described a little bit of any questions about the new version of artificial intelligence, the 01 version, ChatGPT 01. Any comments about anything else that has been said so far about education, please, or the state of AI, please? Okay, so I'm going to then switch over here and share my screen. Okay. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So the
This is
question
my,
really is,
this is my favorite Rotary screen. Favorite Rotary.
uh, so the question is here, can AI level the education gap across all socioeconomic classes? We said the biggest problem that we have with education is people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds might not have the opportunity to be equally prepared to be successful in their education journey. And so the question is, and we know it's very expensive and very difficult for some families to be able to have childcare that is educational as well. Uh, so the question, does AI give us an opportunity, both from a cost factor, but also from a results factor, to level that playing field across the socioeconomic classes by the end of age 5, let's say? Okay, so that's what we're going to look at. And I did this a little bit to be a little provocative because I'm sure there's many people out there that would be horrified by the suggestion, turn your 3-year-old or your 2-year-old, turn your 2-year-old over to AI. And they're going to go and say, huh? Well, let me paint a picture. I described to you earlier this device that can see everything that's going on in a room and can hold conversations about anything. So let's just imagine now that you take your kids and you say, okay, I want you to stay in the room here. I have to go work. I'm doing home office, and I'm going to work in the next room, or I'm going to be over in the corner over there. But I want my kids doing something productive, and I don't want them hurting themselves. I don't want them getting into trouble. So I've got this device that's able to see everything that's going on, and that device has accepted the mission to watch what my children are doing and making sure they're not doing anything harmful or bad, but at the same time to hold intelligent conversations. If we did nothing more than have that artificial intelligence just having conversations that you might hear in a upper middle class family, holding intelligent conversations with their kids in the language of the schools. That's what makes that 30 million word difference when those children go, by the time they go and start school. If you did nothing more than that, and it would level the playing field as far as verbal vocabulary goes, and that would have a huge impact on the success rates of children from those poor neighborhoods. Because the problem we have now, because mostly your early schools, your primary schools, they're neighborhood based. So what happens is, if you're living in a poor neighborhood where most of the kids have no opportunity to hear a lot of higher level discussion and build that vocabulary, then we end up with a school that's got 40, 50, 60% of the kids who lack the vocabulary, which then limit the teacher's ability to teach and have instruction that is going to keep them at a level equivalent to the upper middle class schools. But because the state curriculums require everybody to be treated the same, the teachers do that, the students can't understand it, and at the result, those students at the end of the year go on to the next grade, but they haven't achieved any kind of mastery that's going to enable them to be successful at the next level. So just going and having the AI talking intelligently, so the child's able to say, why is the sky blue? How do birds fly? Or whatever else comes to their mind. Or that the AI is sitting there and saying, oh, Jenny, what do you think of the weather today? Or what would you like to do? Or let me tell you a story. What kind of a story would you like to hear? Okay. In other words, the AI can take the initiative in the conversations, because that AI has that mission in the back of their head. I want to help Jenny expand her vocabulary. Or maybe I want to go and help Jenny know what numbers are and be able to count. Because even though Sesame Street can do that on the TV, Sesame Street can't see what the child is doing. And it can't ask the child questions. And it can't respond to the questions from the child. But the AI can. So can you visualize what I'm describing here? We had this room, the child's moving around the room, and it's okay because the AI is following the movement of the child. It can make warnings if it sees the child going out. It can alert the parent or alert whoever else is responsible, the daycare center person or whatever, if that's the case. But it can do so much with the engagement with that child. Play games. Let's play a game. You can play literally a card game, and have the child, deal two sets and turn over the cards or whatever. So you could do a lot of things. Any comments, questions so far?
Bill, there are no specific comments, but I think the biggest hurdle which I personally feeling in Pakistan, and I'm sure the people in other countries may also feeling, is that all these things we are talking about, I think, to my understanding, the small kids, especially the age we are talking about, they understand in their local languages.
Yes.
And the high level education is now, whatever we talk about STEM, STEAM, or anything, robotics, they are not available in local languages. So I think we must again take the help from the technology, and let's convert something into local languages. When I say local languages, Urdu is commonly understood in Pakistan, but again there are some regional languages also. So we may start from like. So what solution do you have about translating all these into local languages?
Yeah. No, I'm glad you pointed that out. AI, there's some really interesting things. There's an ancient language. I don't think it's spoken anymore. That all of a sudden here, the scientists found out that the AI understood and could speak that language, and they were trying to figure out how did the AI learn that? Why did it learn it? Nobody asked it to learn that language. How did it learn it? I'll try to dig out because it's really a funny story, because the people that at OpenAI that were working on that, it actually got them scared here. Wait a minute, this AI is doing stuff on its own we don't know about. So I think there's great opportunities there. But we have to realize in Pakistan, I don't know, you've got, what is it, 5 or 6 significant languages that are spoken in different parts of Pakistan. That early childhood, that's the language that they're hearing. They're not hearing the Urdu, so they may be at a disadvantage when they go to school because their Urdu is weak. But it's not just developing countries. Another country that is very interesting in that is Switzerland. Switzerland, the two main languages, of course, the majority of people, it's German and French, and a significant share in Italian. But the German part, they don't speak High German. They speak a thing called Swiss German. Now, I worked in Switzerland for a number of years, and my wife, who's German from Germany, was down visiting. We had my wife and my kids spent the summer with us, with me down in Switzerland. And the interesting thing was they stayed in a small village outside of Zurich. And when I left, I went to work, and my wife was there, and the woman from the bed and breakfast there came over. And they couldn't understand each other. Well, or my wife couldn't understand her, let's put it that way, because she was speaking Swiss German. Well, the interesting thing about it is children in Switzerland grow up speaking Swiss German. So when they go to school, when they start school, there's almost an entire year needed to get them to convert from Swiss German to High German, to the German that's used in the education system. So they lose a year in the process of doing that. Now, AI can be a total game changer because, as I mentioned, your grandmother that only speaks Pashtun in reality can now be speaking in Urdu to the child because the avatar can speak many, many languages and therefore can literally help the child learning a language. So one of the things that I asked on that, the preschools around where I live here, many of them, they teach the children both English and either Mandarin or Korean or another language, so that the children, by the time they go to kindergarten, they're fluent in two languages. So the question is here, hey, AI, is it possible that you can teach these children to be bilingual by the time they start school? No problem. There, with the new advanced voice, there are a number of examples out there that are just mind-boggling, how you can learn a new language in a very, very short time, where the AI will start talking to you in the most simple terms, add a word here, add a word there, use cognates, and then explain. If you say, well, what did that word, you added a new word, what did that word mean? Okay, because you're holding a conversation with it. And it can put you into immersion. Because it can bring a couple of other avatars into the scene. So you're having a group discussion in another language. So you're hearing that language being spoken among the other avatars and so forth. So this can apply to literally anything, but language is a good example where that young child, because we know it's the easiest is if you learn a language when you're very young. Even though we have to watch out because you have to make sure people understand it's two languages and they don't think all those words are all the same language. I think that's amazing. So you should take a look in YouTube about some of the examples of how people are using advanced voice in language learning. I know I'm very interested in giving it a try because it will even correct your accents. If you've got an accent when you're speaking a language, and you can say, help me get rid of my accent, or help me be able to make sure I'm pronouncing things in a way that's understandable. Okay, any other comments or questions about that the basic thing there? Okay, so we got this device in the room with some children, maybe one child, maybe multiple child. And what are some of the things that can do? Well, conversational vocabulary builder, just simply by having the conversation in the language that you want to build the vocabulary in is going to increase it, especially if the AI has accepted the mission that my goal is to expand this child's vocabulary. And so I'm going to weave new words in on a constant basis here. I'm going to ask questions because it's a two-way conversation. So the AI can be asking the child questions. It can be saying, "Oh, you see that thing on the windowsill over there to the left? What do you call that? And what do you call this? And what do you call that?" I'm speaking of young children, maybe 2 years old, and the AI is able to say, "Oh, you don't know? Oh, we call that a vase or vase or what, or we call that a lamp. What's that up on the ceiling up there? Oh, okay. You know, so you can the AI can play games with it at a very early age. Gets to be a little older here, and it can be it can be talking to the child about, oh, what's your favorite Sesame Street character? And can you describe that character? What kind of animals do you like? And if it knows that the child has a pet, it can be asking it questions about the pet. So it can be going and going through the colors. And as I mentioned, it can be going through the numbers and asking the child, can you show me 3 fingers? Or, hey, child, I'm holding, how many fingers am I holding up? So you've got so much opportunity there. Then there's the thing of a communications trainer, because you can be evaluating the quality of the conversation of the child to the avatar. The AI can be evaluating, is the child speaking clearly, understandably? Does the grammar, is it making grammar mistakes? Is it are the questions showing depth, or are they all just very surface level? Because I want to get the child going a little deeper when it's asking the questions. I want to have clarity of mission and purpose, all these type of things. And it can react to the conversation originating with the child. The AI can react to be an improvement coach, to advise the child, or make suggestions that are going to help the child improve its communication. Then we have an imagination builder. I just learned yesterday, there's a app out there for children, not just children, anybody, where it shows you images and it asks you to guess what would the prompt be that would result in that image. And so the child can go and say, well, I think you have to include this and comment that and ask that, and all these, and then it will execute what the child said, and then you see side by side. Well, here was the original image, and here's the image that resulted from what the child thought the prompt was. And the game is to get as close as possible. And if you've got 2 or 3 kids in the room, they can make that into a game. Who can come up with the prompt that's the closest to the to what the original image or scene is. Then we have a thing here for critical thinking, where we can the AI can assess the thinking based on the depth and follow on. So if the AI provides an answer to a prompt, the question is, what were the follow-on questions from the child? Did the child, especially if the child asked for a particular answer, it may deliberately put some mistakes in there or some pieces, so to test whether the child is really thinking critically about what it's getting back as a result, and asking intelligent follow-on questions. And I actually did a test with this with the AI, where I had it go and look at its own answers and say, what would you expect somebody to ask as follow-on questions that would make sense? And then it was able to see, did I ask those questions, and was able to say at the end, how come you didn't ask this? How come you didn't question that aspect? And so not only can it go and get you thinking, well, gee, yeah, I probably should have asked about that. Or it may ask you a question, why do you think what I gave you an answer is true? So there's all kinds of things it can do in this direction. This next 1.5, creating a creative thinking workshop. This is perhaps my favorite. And what this is, when I first asked AI and I described the avatar and all the device and everything, it came back and said, well, some of the things that the AI will probably take a little longer, maybe 3 to 5 years, would be in the area of the critical thinking, but also in creative thinking. And it mentioned imaginative storytelling is something here that the AI, that the child would not be able to learn with the help of the AI. So then I went through a game, and I had the AI asking, oh, let's make a story. What would you like to make a story about? And the child starts to develop a story, and it asks questions like, oh, where is this taking place? And who are the characters? And so the child has got to imagine now some characters, and it's got to imagine where this might be. It has to imagine what are the things that are involved, maybe what the plots are, the subplots. And in the discussion of this, the child is expanding on the story more and more. And then periodically can be asked, okay, let's summarize. Where are we in the story so far? And develop this story with this back and forth, but it's all about getting that child imagining things, and looking for cohesiveness in the story, so that if it said, oh, this person went into the church and then came out of the store, that the AI would say, well, but wait a minute, you said they went into the church. How'd they get to the store? And so the child is starting to combine this idea. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta remember that the linkages in the story have to make sense, or things like that. So this could be in a story like that, or it could be here. Let's make up an adventure game. Tell me an adventure game where this person is going through a maze or going through whatever, and they're finding things, and they're battling monsters or doing whatever. But you can really go and get the child coming up with the craziest ideas. Now, what's new on this was the idea that as a child, maybe it gets a little older, because you can start with very simple stories when they're very, very young. And it might be stories about the things their grandfather did or grandmother did, or it could be all kinds of crazy stuff. But then as they get a little older, it might, or even when they're still young, oh, why don't we turn this into a book, a picture book? Tell me, what did this character look like? And what did that character look like? And what were they doing? And as it's describing this, the AI is generating the images that go along with this, and maybe even showing like the double page spread of the book, showing here's an image on this side, here's an image on that side. And it's helping the child go and add and take away stuff and change things, so that they're seeing a book being created that's their story. And when they get a little bit older than that, it's a printed book. And guess what? The child is saying that, and it's their little booklet is coming out the printer in the back of the room. Or what is doable right now is that story that this child has been making up, that we can say, okay, let's turn this into a video. And literally their story can be made into a video using tools like InVideo.ai today. So imagine here the impact on a child who's been making up a story for a half a day and expanding on it. And all of a sudden their story's there as a movie, basically. That's doable today. We still got to figure the cost, because they charge for credits on these things that might be expensive. But I hope you can get the idea. Imagine the child, imagine the impact of the child who's going through that, making the story and having it turn into these different types of things. And finally, we get to the last one, which is this new one that's capable on the chain of thought reasoning, where we're able to take the child and give them puzzles or give them a problem or whatever, and say, okay, how do we solve the problem? Now, I remember when I first learned programming, and of course that was back in the 1960s. So we had to, we did things a little different. We actually always used the example, okay, you're going to a phone booth, those old things where you had to put coins in to make the phone work. And you want to call somebody, what's the steps that you had to do? And the idea is to get to understand what the steps are. Well, first of all, I have to find the number, know what number I want to call. Then I got to take some coins out of my pocket. Then I've got to pick up the receiver. So if I forget to say pick up the receiver, it's not going to work, because you can't make the call if you didn't pick up the receiver. and then I have to put coins in, and I have to wait till I hear the dial tone, and then I've got to dial the number that I found, and all those different steps. So you can ask that child, okay, how would you go about solving this problem, doing whatever it is? What do you look for? Even if it's doing something like a Sudoku puzzle, you might say, well, first I'm going to look for the number combinations where there's only one instance of a number missing and there's only one empty square in one of the squares there, and fill those in first. So the idea is to get the child thinking about what are the steps to do anything, and be able to then turn around and critique their chain of thought, if you would, their reasoning chain of thought that can be applied to any kind of a problem that you can imagine. And they can be coached on that so that they become really good problem solvers, doing analysis, how to do analysis. How would you do research here, even though you probably would not use the word research with a 3-year-old. But the idea is still to be able to have that. And as they're getting older and they're 4 or 5 years older, of course, you're getting more sophisticated in each of the things that you're doing. So again, let me stop here. Imagine here that the AI has helped the child do all of these things, improve their critical thinking. It got them to be fantastic storytellers with a great imagination. All of these things here, actually, I didn't put it down, but it is a great curiosity generator. It generates curiosity because the AI is asking them questions about all of these things that the child doesn't ask. How can birds fly? Or how can an airplane fly? Maybe the AI asked the child, what do you there's this thing called airplanes there. You've seen them. How do you think how can they fly? They don't flap their wings or whatever. And so we can get children being curious about things. So thoughts, please, on this idea of what this could do from an educational perspective, especially among young children. Can you see things like having young children developing stories? And especially if you got 2 to 3 young children together in a room, and the one comes up with a little bit of idea and another one adds, oh yeah, and and we can add this piece to it too. Oh, and the piece, this is other person that's coming in from the other room. There's so many things like this. So comments. I keep talking and I'm not getting comments. So please, somebody interrupt me. Say something, please.
I might as well say hello.
Hi, bud.
So I came in late today because it used to be these meetings started at 10 o'clock a.m. my time, and that's when I had set my alarm. So this morning the alarm went off, and I checked the WhatsApp messages and saw, 9 o'clock. Okay, so I put into the chat earlier. I think what Bill's talking about is really, really very, very important. And I was a little bit, I guess, synergies happened. One of my colleagues in India connected to me yesterday and wrote a little note in WhatsApp and said, I'm very interested in doing an EdTech conference, basically education technology. And so she's with an organization called LA Global Foundation. And so I've been talking to IBM recently. This place is called Venture Lab at the IBM headquarters here in Canada. And so I thought, okay, well, let's see if we can take on her idea of doing an EdTech conference, maybe right here at the IBM headquarters in Markham, perhaps next year. And I think Bill could be a keynote speaker at that. I mean, I just love listening to him now about these, talking about these technologies and what they can potentially do to level the playing field globally around the world for education, not just in the US, which is, I mean, he's showing the huge disparities, but in developed countries, developing countries, but around the world to really accelerate this whole pathway toward achieving these what we call global goals, right? The sustainable development goals. And so I think the idea of really engaging the communities in these types of conversations that right now we're only having these small conversations within a very limited number of people are having these conversations. I mean, there's how many, maybe 20, 25 people, but we need to have these kinds of conversations like what Bill's talking about on a much wider scale with the teachers, with the school boards, with the educators, with the universities and the colleges and the high schools and the grade schools and the kindergartens even, right? To really bring this message to the world that we can utilize these tools in really positive ways, and not to be so afraid of these AI tools that are coming out. Yes, we may not understand exactly how they're working, and there may be, of course, there are potentials for bad actors to be utilizing these technologies, but the potential to utilize these technologies for good, I think is just as great, if not greater.
Yeah.
Can I ask,
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
AI, does AI show prejudice, racism, elitism in its answers?
Absolutely. It's bias. We're talking about bias, and because AI is nothing more than the collection of all the recorded experiences and knowledge of humans, of millions of humans. If racists have expressed their ideas, that is in that collective there. Now, the thing that we're seeing is because of what we've learned when ChatGPT first came out, and we saw within 60 days we had over 100 million users on ChatGPT, and then people started to say, I use that, or I use the image builder to create images, and every person it doesn't know what five is, it doesn't know what five fingers are, every hand has 8 fingers or only 3 fingers or whatever, and it can't even multiply. If I add 3 times 4, it comes up with 28. It hallucinates. It just makes up so much data, and the hallucination factor is very real all the way through even ChatGPT 4.0, which was one of the stars until a couple of days ago. Because it's built to try to get whatever the best answer it can get out of the sum of data out there. It's just going to give it back to you, whatever it thinks is the best answer, and it generally thinks whatever I found a lot of, that's probably the better answer. Now with the new 01, where it reviews its own answers, it reflects on its own answers, and it can look to see, did somebody disagree with that? So it finds an answer, and then it goes out and says, oh, there's some disagreement on this, and then it looks and tries to eliminate the bias. Or what had even a greater impact was the idea of special instructions, where or custom instructions, they called it, where you're able to define the context. So if I go out there and I ask some question about some medical thing, and I just ask it with no instructions and no context, who knows what piece of information that somebody might have said that could be totally stupid because they're not informed at all, and it gives me that answer. But if I go out there and say, well, only look at peer-reviewed papers by qualified doctors in that field, then the odds that I'm going to get a good answer go up tremendously. So we already saw over the last year and a half that the quality of answers of those people that kept with it, because an awful lot of people saw the mistakes, they saw that it can't spell words, and they gave up. They just say, "Oh no, this isn't ready for prime time. This is not something that's useful. You can't trust it," and they gave up. And but those that stuck with it and learned how to construct effective prompts, how to give it the context that it really needs, how to be able to convey to the AI what kind of a result you're looking for. They're able to dramatically reduce bias, dramatically reduce hallucinating, because you can literally say, I don't want you to guess. You know, give me your sources. Tell me where you got the information from. So we see that there are AIs like Perplexity that do that very well. They'll tell you, okay, here's where I got the information that I'm telling you. Here's where it came from. And you're going to see here in a minute, I'm going to show you some extracts of the conversations I had with AI on this subject. And I took out, because at the end of every one of the paragraphs, it listed to me the sources where it got that information in that paragraph from. I took those out because they're all hyperlinks here, and I didn't want to put hyperlinks into my PowerPoint. But now with the 01 version that's out, where it's thinking and it's creating, it's got built into it the idea that it generates hypotheses on things, and then it goes and tests the hypotheses, and in some cases it tests the test to the hypotheses, because if it's got doubts, and you'll see some of these if you look at some of the videos, and I will I think I can post to the chat here a bunch of videos that give examples. And when you take a look where they show the chain of reasoning that it went through, that's the fascinating thing. You're not going to see it unless you literally ask for that. But where you look at that and you see that, it is amazing. Now, what it's not going to do, it's not going to go in let's say a country like Pakistan, or some of the countries in sub-Saharan Africa. It's not going to go and create as much information. There's just not as much recorded information in those countries about a lot of subjects. So as a result, perhaps some cultural aspects and some thinking aspects of those countries are not going to be reflected. Now, that may make a difference if your questioning is about what was the thinking of this tribe in this part of Africa at some period in time. That might not be there anywhere near to the degree that kind of information is available about some group in Europe.
Because there's a lot of unrecorded history. There's oral history, isn't there?
Exactly. Now, the thing is, because of that we're seeing, just like with self-driving cars, cameras being put up all over the place, there's a lot more data that is not coming from humans, that is due to observations of devices. And conceivably, I know there's initiatives in a lot of groups, and Lloyd perhaps knows more about that, where they're trying to capture the oral histories, trying to record those, have people record those. But it's still probably never going to come up to the level of the amount of data that's available in, let's say, in English, because that just so much of the world has been doing their research work and things like that in English for such a long time. Now, there may come a point where they say, okay, we're going to translate that into local languages everywhere, but it's not going to catch the cultural aspects, perhaps, because it's still going to have, let's say, biases that are based on the education of the people who did write those papers, wherever they came from and got their education. There's probably going to be bias of that in there.
Yeah.
I don't think you can avoid that, but in a lot of cases, it makes no difference. I'm pretty sure that the liver and lungs of people in Pakistan and Africa are not that different from the liver and lungs of people in Europe and North America. So if I'm looking at it from a medical question, perhaps there are local diseases that we don't have as much information on that would be good to capture, but an awful lot of kinds of information. The laws of math and physics and things like this, they don't vary from culture to culture. And but I do agree here that there are biases, and that's the biases are going to be a bigger problem. We're able to go and deal with the hallucinations with the self-reflection tools that are becoming available, but biases is more difficult to detect that is a bias in the first place.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest biases right now, that if you deal a lot with ChatGPT, is it is very biased towards humans. In other words, it always starts off with, well, humans are better at this and humans are better at that. And it's only if you show them and point and say, well, what about this study out there that was done in Japan? Or what about that study that showed that that the humans prefer the empathy of AI over the empathy of humans? And then it starts to reflect, just like here, it said, oh, the AI is not going to help children develop their imaginative storytelling skills. But then we came and said, well, here, this description like that. And oh, it came back, oh, yeah, I didn't think of that. Yes, that. And then it gave me a big breakdown. I think you'll see some of this going on. Anyway, so we're at 10:30. And so I think probably, unless somebody has something else, I should continue. You're not going to read all this, I'm sure. But maybe just read that bigger text at the top. A year from now, AI devices for young children, such as the next generation of Alexa powered by large language models like Anthropic's Cloud, talking here about the tools like the Echo View 10. Not Alexa is not just Alexa. There's a lot of models, but the Echo View 10 is the one with the screen and the cameras that is on a swivel tool, are likely to be highly advanced and integrated both conversational and educational capabilities. And this is AI speaking now. Here's a summary of what I expect these devices to be capable of based on current technical trends. And I asked, what are we going to be able to do within the next year? So real-time conversational interaction, natural voice-based interactions, personalized learning. They'll be able to engage with devices through speech, and that the AI will be able to respond in ways that mimic human conversation, understanding tone, adjusting for pauses, and responding with emotion. Imaginative storytelling and creative play. The AI will be able to guide children through storytelling. The AI could help children convert these stories into picture books, written stories, even narrated videos using the tools like NVIDIA. And learning foundation skills like literacy and numeracy, because it can integrate structured learning paths into its normal conversation. The whole vocabulary building, basic grammar, math skills will be embedded into everyday interactions, with the AI weaving educational content into daily conversation and games. So the fourth, critical thinking development. It'll be capable of fostering critical thinking by evaluating the quality of children's questions and comments. Through iterative questioning, AI will guide children to become better critical thinkers, teaching them to evaluate information and think independently. Gameplay-based learning to reinforce skills through fun and interactive activities. This could include counting, problem solving, literacy challenges that are personalized to where the child is at in their learning process. And emotional and behavioral monitoring. And while full emotion recognition and behaviors still under development, that basic emotions can be recognized through voice patterns and in some of the viewing. Now, as a case in point on this, because there's a lot of people feel, well, this is something that AI is weak on. AI, about a year, maybe it's 2 years ago now, an AI won the world poker, or beat the world poker player champion. And poker is all about bluffing and trying to trick people, so you've got to read people through their micro movements in their face, through their eye movements, through just the way they're behaving. And poker did a better job at being able to read the emotional state of the humans that it was playing against than the humans were able to do. So some of the things that are going to be missing initially is there's this thing called instant dynamic video generation. That's the capability, for example, that if you were asking the AI, okay, how do I fix this thing in my sink? Or you're asking it, how do I approach this geometry problem? It's able to right now. You can actually do that, and it can call in recorded videos. There's tons and tons and tons of tutorials on YouTube about almost anything, and AI has the ability to literally show you the YouTube that video tutorial for whatever you asked for. But we are approaching a state where the AI will be able to generate create a video on the fly that shows you graphically how to do whatever you're asking it to do. It's not there right now, because right now the generation time for video is longer, but we're moving towards that point. Today you can have the AI generate on the fly for you a PowerPoint presentation with all the video, the images and the text, and then the AI can narrate its own PowerPoint that got generated on the fly within seconds of you talking. The other thing is that still not fully there is advanced emotional intelligence. It can do the basic emotions. It can recognize joy and a lot, but the really deep emotions might take longer. If you're not familiar, there's a product from China called Emo. And what Emo, it'll blow your mind to be able to see, for example, Audrey Hepburn singing a song that didn't exist when she was the age of the singer. In other words, you can take just a photo of somebody and take a song, and she's singing this song and with such emotion, and it is, you would swear this person is singing and they're so into the song they're singing. All their facial expressions and emo is short for emotion, and it does it. And there's a product from I think it's Microsoft. They've got a similar product that they've brought out that basically will let you take a picture and have that picture do anything and basically turn it into an avatar, live avatar, singing songs or speaking to you, but with the full emotional aspect of whatever it is. So you can say you're an actor and you're just heard here that your spouse or some loved one died or was injured, and you're seeing all the emotional contortions of the face and things. That's doable today. So, but there's still work to be done in these areas. So, looking here at these things that are available. Okay, we'll come back there. So, what are your thoughts on this, please?
My thinking is that this is also scary for like I said, the bad actors side of things. We're already seeing what is it, that famous singer that just endorsed Kamala Harris in the US, their elections, and the fake endorsement of Donald Trump, right? And so this whole utilization of AI that's getting harder and harder to discern the reality from the generated.
You mean like the picture of Trump kissing Kamala Harris?
Something and I saw it yesterday too.
Yeah.
I saw 2 or 3 memes already on Facebook being
No,
posted
it's
with
very
Trump
true.
in a boxing ring on the floor and Kamala Harris there, like with her fist in the air, winning the boxing match, right? It was just like
but
happening right away.
On the flip side, though, there's a lot of very creative people who have never been taught how to unleash their potential.
Absolutely.
So this would help a lot of creative people create content.
Absolutely. And especially here, what it could do for the confidence level of young people in their ability to do things. I remember hearing somebody say once about a year and a half ago that the printing press democratized knowledge, made knowledge available to people. And AI is democratizing ability. It's making it possible for people to do things that in the past they would have had to pass off to some very skilled person, that they're now able to do things themselves with the support of AI that would not even have been imaginable a few years ago. Yes, Amar.
Yeah, Bill, first I must congratulate you for talking so long. Really, I was enjoying it. Really, I was enjoying every bit what you said. This is really amazing. Hats off to you. And God Almighty may give you the courage and passion to do all these things, because only few people can do it. Not always people can do it. My not a question. My quick comment. You will comment on that also. I think this is the first time in the history of the world. I must say. Bill, can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you.
Okay. This is first time in the history of the world now. I think globe. I must say the globe, that all human beings are facing the same type of problems. Like climate change is one of it, like hunger, like malnutrition, everything we can talk about. Same problems. And now they are thinking on the same lines. You know, I work very frequently with the China, I work with the Americans, and I work with the number of Middle East countries, European countries. Trust you me, as I told you, CDI, the China Development Index, same thing what we are talking about. In only, I think, 3 days before, the World Bank president has said that now we'll have to adjust our sales accordingly, and I think everybody is saying like this. So I think there's one sentence I would like to say: use of emerging technologies, and AI is one of the emerging technologies. Use of emerging technologies for sustainable world. Very simple statement. Sustainable world. Now, I think there are 3 things. One is the understanding of all these things at the grassroots level. In Pakistan, we have only in Karachi or Islamabad, we don't have any problem. People understand it very well and everything going fine. But I think now time has come. Even the United Nations is thinking about taking all these things in a very uniform manner to every country. And all incentives, which donor incentives or IMF incentives, must be linked with the attaining the targets of SDGs, right? So, to my understanding, I think there's a urgent need. I must say, it must be completed maximum in 2025, when UN will be taking the stock taking of all these things. And from 25 to 30, I think you are with us daily almost, and at least 3 to 4 days in a week, we are focusing only one thing in Pakistan, that by 2030 we should attain a position, right? So I would like to comment that how we all can, I must say, all can contribute in this direction, in this strategy, as not as countries. I think after a few years, the physical border will be of no value. This will be a understanding between countries, the border systems, because the human beings will enter into era where then this hegemony and this supremacy will not be there. Only one per agenda: how to remain with satisfaction in this world. Over to you, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, this need to view the world as one entity is crucial, because right now we have countries that are racing to see how can they weaponize AI as quickly as possible. Not necessarily because they want to dominate others, but they're afraid that others might develop it first, and that may cause them to be at risk. Dr. Pandey, please. You're muted. Please unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Please unmute yourself. Oh, okay. I guess there. I want to say something here. A couple of years ago, maybe it's now about 8 years ago, there's something called the X Prizes there that offer prizes of many millions of dollars. They offered a prize of $15 million to the whatever group could come up with the best or the first tool that could run on any cell phone that would enable a totally illiterate child to become literate in the literacy and numeracy within 15 months, I think it was. And they actually had the semifinalists, which I think was about 6 companies in Tanzania, to test out the tools they had. Obviously, we didn't have these kind of tools that we're talking about now, but the idea that if we could leverage devices, because one of the problems we have, and I'm sure it's true in Pakistan and India, in most of the Southern Hemisphere, and in some of the poor regions of developed countries, is that we may have built schools and made schools available, but it's hard to go and have the same quality of instruction, the same quality of teachers when we're talking about human teachers. And I recall a video talking about rural areas in central India where it was being visited by some group, and the teachers in the schools there could not read. So they were the teachers. And of course, we know there's a problem in a lot of developing countries because of paying. That payment is not coming through regularly, or it's very low, that teachers don't show up at the schools every day because they've got to earn money on some days during the week. But so a low-cost device that now is going to deliver education at the level of the best teachers in the world to everybody anywhere in the world. Imagine the ability in a country like Pakistan for a fraction, potentially a fraction of the cost of what the human teacher would cost, and especially to try to have a human teacher at that level of quality of teaching as the best teachers in the world, that this is now possible. And it's possible to do in the language. It's possible to do with a trust figure, so that the child, this is a figure they relate to and means something to them, that has memory about what we talked about last week and the week before, that understands all the other things that are taking place in the life of those students that they're interacting with. Let's just imagine that for a moment, and just think here of how big a game changer that could be. Amar, you might want to comment on that. Just taking the poor neighborhoods in the cities in Pakistan, where you've got electricity in Pakistan, and you could provide learning centers with these devices where people could come in and just sit down at a device and turn it on, and it would recognize and automatically adjust to the person that it's interacting with. could be a young child or a child at any age. Imagine how quickly that could make a difference in Pakistan.
No, why only in Pakistan and India? It could be used in the advanced countries like America, Europe, and all that to accelerate the learning of these young students and all that.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Pandey, you weren't here in the beginning, because in the beginning we described how in the United States, Dr. Pandey, by the way, is in New Jersey as I am, and we have 73,000 elementary or primary school children in New Jersey that are attending schools that have in the 10 years not achieved to get even 10% of their students to grade level. So this is very real, that the developed countries need it as much. Early on, I pointed out the recent tests in the United States showed 40% of 10-year-olds are not effective readers in the United States. And a similar study in Germany last year showed that 25% of German fourth graders can barely read. So yes, you're right. This could be a game changer everywhere.
Good. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so let's take a look. Then looking specifically at critical thinking. It involves questioning assumptions, evaluating evidence, synthesizing information from multiple perspectives, and all of this can be guided through well-designed questioning techniques. AI, especially conversational AI like ChatGPT, has demonstrated the ability to engage in dialogues that encourage deeper reflection and critical inquiry. With the development of structured leading questions and iterative feedback loops, as we discussed in the context of storytelling, we described about, can also help children learn the critical thinking skills. So why is critical thinking possible with AI? Because this is one of the complaints that you hear all the time, that, oh, AI can't do critical thinking. It can't support critical thinking. Well, here's something. Through guided questioning, through evaluating the quality of the questions and comments that are coming from the human, from the student, by encouraging follow-up questions and getting children to into thinking, exploratory thinking, and to dig deeper into concepts. So that we might have follow-ups like, what do you think would happen if a plant doesn't get sunlight? Or how does water help the plant grow? I mean, these are just a couple of examples. And then consistency and memory. When we talked about the storytelling here, helping the child realize the importance of consistency of character, consistency of the storylines. Okay, so AI can evaluate critical thinking by tracking question patterns, whether the child consistently follows up on answers and explores deeper implications, assessing the logic of the child's reasoning, because we can now have the AI develop that chain of thought for reasoning, and then comparing it to what the child did, and then guiding reflection. So that we encourage the child to reflect. So the conclusion with regards to critical thinking is AI will be capable of guiding children through critical thinking development within the next year. By asking structured, thought-provoking questions and evaluating children's responses, AI can help children refine their ability to think critically. AI's capability to evaluate the quality of questions and guide further exploration makes it a promising tool for fostering critical thinking at an early age. And this represents a significant shift from the more limited view of AI's capability that I initially expressed. That's because ChatGPT initially said, oh, the critical thinking is something that the AI is weak on. And only after I challenged it and gave some examples, it reevaluated its position and came back with what you saw on these previous pages. Okay, I've got to move fast because of time. So the device, like I described, based on the Amazon Echo View 10, type of a thing with AI built into it, with live view, with advanced voice and so forth. It enables, here's why AI could be a game changer. It would provide for personalized, scalable learning, equal access to high quality early education, closing the vocabulary and verbal gap, overcoming human resource limitations of the fact that you can't get in certain parts of the world a qualified teacher, and the potential to dramatically close the learning gap. And even in places like the United States, where you might have in a school, if you've got 3 teachers teaching the same subject in the school, I guarantee you one of them's a little better than the others. This creates an opportunity for us to take what the best teacher would do in any given situation and apply that to every student, and every student on an individual basis, because at any moment of time, not every student's mind is equally focused on whatever is the teaching is going on. So this now breaks in. By the way, this is word for word what came back from AI with regards to these 5 points here. Personalized, scalable learning. It gets into personalized learning, continuous learning, learning into everyday activities. We don't have time to go through each one, all the words, but it can reinforce vocabulary, literacy, numeracy, giving these children constant educational exposure that they might otherwise miss. Equal access to high quality early education, accessibility, and even talking about what are we going to do about those that are on the wrong side of the digital divide? What are our options of what we could do? And of course, this, if I had had time, I would have expanded on that, and I'm sure it would have given me all kinds of examples of how we can work on that side. In a previous one, I did something similar. We have things like Khan Academy. There's something called Khan Academy Lite, which does not require a live internet connectivity, and it will run on a $35 Raspberry Pi server and cheap tablets, so you can make this available in the developing world relatively easily. Consistency in learning, guiding the children through the same foundational literacy and numeracy skills as those received in elite preschools. Closing the vocabulary and verbal gap. And we talked about the 30 million fewer words that some children don't hear in their early years. It could reduce the word gap, the critical thinking and problem solving aspects, and cognitive development, all of these things that could become available in low resource areas, and overcoming the human resource limitations that we talked about, and then the potential for dramatically closing the learning gap through all of this. Okay, so that basically is the sum of what I wanted to be able to discuss today. And I'm going to stop my sharing here. Okay, so I think here, I don't know, I hope you're recognizing the potential that this is not something where the teachers should be fighting. We see teachers around the world fighting AI. And those teachers who say, my number one goal is the success of my students. That's what it's all about. It's not that I come to school every day and I give lectures or I do this. That's not what it's about. It's about maximizing the success of your students. And in a whole other series that might be worthwhile to discuss at another time, I asked, what are the implications of all this? And it's interesting. We have to get rid of the calendar focus of education. So there's no such thing as grade level, no such thing as I'm third grade. You might be third grade in English and fourth grade in history and second grade in math, all at the same time. We need to get rid of the idea that teachers are responsible for instruction, because right now there are so many instruction tools out there that we have things like the flipped classroom mentality, where teachers are encouraged to make videos and have their children watch the videos for homework and do their homework in class, because when they're doing the homework and when they got the lecture in class and then they do the homework at home, there's no one to help them if they get stuck. And so by reversing that, they can do that. But a couple of years ago, the word was every teacher go out there and record your lectures. Well, not every teacher is an equally good lecturer, and not every teacher is equally good at being able to record themselves. But there are so many really top-notch professional tutorials out there that are done psychologically, pedagogically correct, that why would a teacher want to spend the time recording, reinventing the wheel, if you would, and duplicating the effort? So it went through and it said we need to go and have testing moved outside of the teacher's realm to third parties or objective parties. Could be within the school, or could be if we've got standards, if we're saying, hey, this is what it means to be in third grade in math or to have achieved it. It's got to be like a red belt or a blue belt in karate or judo. You earn the belt, so now you've earned a third grade standing. That's what the level you're at. And so it's got to go and become mastery based. So when we become mastery based, that means students have to learn at their own pace. So the student who was sick for a week, they just pick up where they left off. A student that was not able to concentrate for a couple of days, that's not a problem, because they will continue to stay on the learning unit they're on until they've mastered it, because otherwise we're just building them up to fail, because eventually the sum of what they didn't learn is going to cause them to fail. So by being mastery based and saying you can only proceed when you've mastered the prerequisites for whatever the next learning unit is, we are preparing them to hear, congratulations, you now passed this. Whereas we've got many schools where 5-year-olds, all they've ever heard is you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, because our schools just say, oh, this is what you know and don't know. Now let's just continue as if you never were assessed. Whereas now we're saying, okay, there's no such thing as fail. There's pass and there's not yet passed. And we need to get into where we have, for example, testing. If we're doing students learning at their own pace, we need to make testing available on demand. So when a student says, hey, I'm ready, I passed all the learning units to get there, I'm ready now to take the test has to be available. And tests should be, hey, you didn't pass the test, go ahead and bone up on what you think you were missing and take it again next week or next month when you feel you're ready. This is all very easy to do, but it will require teachers to think differently about not just repeating, well, this is what I've done for the last 20 years, so this is what I'm going to do next year. I have all my lectures laid out. That's not effective. We know that it's the teaching orientation that is the problem with our education system. If we are saying the primary goal of the education system is to prepare everybody to be a successful lifelong learner, because the shelf life of education has become so short. You've got to be constantly learning through your life. And if that's got to be the case, then every time when teachers are teaching, the student is not learning to learn and just opening their head and letting whatever flows by collect. So we need to get students, the primary purpose of education has to be learn how to learn. And that the teacher is a crutch. When the teacher tells you the answers, the teacher is a crutch. We have to turn the teachers into the mentor coaches that are encouraging, yeah, you can do it, go for it, type of thing, just like an athletic coach. And if the student has problems outside the school or whatever that is distracting them from being able to learn, that's what the mentor coach has to deal with. So the mentor coach is motivation and helping deal with distractions from learning. And also helping to guide the student as to figuring out what it is they need to learn, to figure out where can I find the best learning resources, and how can I best use the learning resources. And other than that, the teacher really needs to back off and stay out of the way and let the learner learn, because that's the primary mission. Okay. That's more or less what I was thinking of today. Anybody have any last comments or thoughts?
Oh, I haven't even been muted. Yeah, I'm actually as I listen to this, my wife is around behind my shoulder there, and she's an early childhood educator, and I listen to what she talks about and all of the things that are sort of happening in her school and how she teaches. And I'm just thinking around all of the things you're talking about, like she needs to understand this. Like really from the youngest age, like literally, I'm thinking, yeah, even the kindergarten students, like down to 4 years old, right?
3 years old, 2 to 3 years old.
They should be learning this stuff and understanding these paradigm shifts.
They're not explicitly learning. They're still playing. They're still making up stories. They're still, just doing things, but they're doing things with a strategy behind the partner that they're communicating with. Is got that strategy that's trying to guide them to a result.
And I heard that I read a story recently that came in from the local news here. Ontario, the province, because in Canada the education system is based on each province, right? So as a federation, we don't have there's no national schooling system at all. Federal government is totally hands off. So each province has their own schooling system. So the Ontario government decided that for early childhood education next year, they would do away with play-based learning and focus on curriculum. And I was just like, no. And so now I think, oh my God, yeah, it's really, really, really important that you can actually learn so much just through that play.
Finland actually calls their system play-based learning. They make a big effort.
Well, we have it here right now. That's what exists right now in Ontario. But the government
the problem
today just said we're going to get rid of it.
Yeah, the problem is here when we talk about education, most people are thinking about how do we change what the schools do? How do we change what the teachers do? Very few people are talking about how do we change what's going on with the learners. And so there's the article that caused last week's session from the MIT Technical Review was saying here that, let's forget about AI in the schools. Let's ban the students from AI, but here's how AI can help the teachers. Here's how it can help you develop quizzes. It can help you with your curriculum development. It can help you with all these different things. But we're forgetting the purpose of school is the learners, to help the learners learn. And so this is something hopefully that can change. Ramatu, yes, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering whether the developed world is really ready for this change. I know schools in underserved communities. I'm originally from Ghana and I live here in the United States, but I know people, my nephews and my nieces, who have never touched a computer. And now that we are at the level of AI, we have to use the computer to access this information. So I don't know whether I'm seeing a kind of a class that we are going to create if all the world schools or institutions are not equipped to undertake this new endeavor. Mm-hmm. So how are we going to help other communities in the developing world, to be abreast with other nations in this journey?
Actually, it's a difficult question to simply answer, because part of the problem we've seen is a lot of the push in developing countries to say education's the answer, education's the key, has resulted in some cases in doubling the number of young people who complete universities. And so what has the net result been? We see that in these countries, we have the highest unemployment rate for university graduates in the world are in developing countries in many cases. And why is that? It's because while we gave these a certain share of the population the means to offer advanced services, that they could offer services that were not available before, we did not increase the capacity of that country to pay for those services. So now what happens? The people that gain the services are looking and saying, well, there's no demand in my country, because demand is not just need or want, it's the ability to pay. So they say there's no demand in my country for my skills that I've earned. So now I've got to migrate to some place where there is a market, where there is demand for my skills, what I can offer.
Brain drain.
The brain drain, exactly. So this, we have to think a little different when we're looking at developing countries. It's not enough to go and say we're going to just increase education, especially if it's doing education only for a small percentage of the population. We have to figure out how are we going to raise the economic participation in those countries, because this has also led to, we see in India and other countries, and even, believe it or not, in the United States, there's one state here that I know of where the Commissioner of Education has said the same thing. The parents do not want their children to be educated because they live in a remote area, and they say, if our children get education, get good education, they're going to leave our community because our community doesn't have a need for those skills. So I don't want my child to be educated. And I've told the story many times of the head of oncology at the Teachers College, and Ramesh, you may even know her. Some point I'll mention who that is. But she's from Central India, and her mother only completed 3rd grade. Her father only completed 4th grade. And the mother, though, she was taken out of school in 3rd grade because her grandfather was a wandering judge that went from village to village to judge cases, and he was blind. And so she was tasked to guide him from village to village. So she wasn't in school, but she spent all day listening to all these cases and listening to all the reasoning. And she got a tremendous education through that process, not a formal and reading and all of that, but an appreciation. So when they had kids, the father forbid that the kids could go to school. And but he was a hard worker, and he went off to work. And when he was at work, the wife snuck the kids into school. And he didn't know about it until the oldest boy graduated or reached the highest level that they had in their village, and would be going to the next village to continue his education. And he forced his wife to take all the kids out of school. And his wife actually took the kids and left them and said, no, not going to do that. And which is almost unheard of in rural India like that. And but he realized she was serious, and he begged her to come back and said the kids can go to school. Well, in the end, 6 kids, every one of those 6 kids, a doctor, a scientist, an engineer, every one of them tremendously successful, and every one of them left the village. Every one of them is scattered around the world now. But the mother ended up opening a school there, a very successful school, and doing great things there. But the kids are scattered around the world. The family is not the unit that it was anymore. But so this is a challenge. And the commissioner of the state of West Virginia said one of her biggest problem was that she encountered a lot of parents in West Virginia who did not want their children to be able to get advanced education for the same reason, because they would go to either the East Coast or the West Coast or down to Texas, because there just were not jobs requiring the advanced skills available in West Virginia in enough numbers. Anyway,
Yeah, Bill, I just the AI, would they use the tools for economic gains, let's say in Africa?
Yeah.
So would they use the tools
There,
in extracting gold,
yeah.
diamonds, and the rest? So if
Well,
that be
they probably, you know, it's could it change? I think the robotics might change here, the way diamonds and rare minerals and things are mined. But I think by and large, there are many people that are using AI to make a lot of money, because right now, for the next couple of years, there are huge opportunities to literally have AI write your business plans, go figure out who you can get the investment money from, or to figure out what markets and how you're going to market and so forth and so on. But the real question is here, the availability of devices that would allow children to be educated in many of these places, these remote places. It's very difficult. You can open schools in countries where they're not available, but it's very difficult to get quality educators. At least when you're going and saying the measurement is what is the quality of education a student is getting in an exclusive schools in London or Boston, and how do we make that available to children all around the world? Now, some people in these remote areas are going to say, I don't want my children to get these kinds of education because I want them to stay close to home. I need them here for the next generation of where they're at. But it's a very complex issue, because we know a lot of the poverty in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, and I'm sure in Pakistan is the same way. The population growth in subsistence farming communities results in generation for generation that the land be further fragmented to support the increasing number of family units. And as the amount of land gets smaller and smaller, it becomes more and more difficult to be able to be successful as a subsistence farmer. So there's a lot of challenges, and I should post at some point, because I've had a lot of discussions with artificial intelligence about what can we do about these communities that are remote, who maybe their geographical circumstances is such that it's really not possible to find a way to be able to improve life as long as they stay in that location, in a geographic location. And we know that China, a big part of the success of China in reducing poverty is related to their program of relocating, taking people from a dozen remote geographic locations where there's no running water, there's no sanitation, there's no electricity, and the soil is bad and the weather's bad and everything else, there's no schools, and relocating those people into more urban areas where it is easier to provide healthcare, education, services, infrastructure, all of these types of things, and raise their quality
Did
of
I
life.
read something?
Yes, Huma.
As you are talking about population growth. In our country, Pakistan, almost we have 23 crores of population right now.
Mhm.
And you know the area of Pakistan. It is 76,000 something square kilometers.
Yeah.
The area is so small, and you can see the geography and the topography. Pakistan is like this, in like more or less like a slanting position, right? So the thing is, what I feel and how I used to quote now is, Pakistan is this much small with 23 crore of population and with less resources, very less resources, and no planning at all, what I am seeing.
Mhm.
And
No,
this
this
is very,
yeah. No, this is exactly the situation here, and it's very difficult because there are cultural aspects that play a role into the behaviors, and it's human nature to want to stay with what you know than to go into the unknown. So you have a lot of people who are living in villages as their great grandparents lived, and they're very reluctant to make big changes. and it
Yeah.
becomes it's a difficult challenge, but it's not something here that we're going to solve with the education aspect alone. But one of the things we can do, and I've talked about in Pakistan, for example, if Rotary clubs would go and get a laptop, a satellite internet connection device, and a projector to be able to go from village to village and just set up an AI and invite the kids there to come and dream aloud, say your imagination, and have whatever these kids are describing being generated in front of their eyes, just like they're saying it, and they're going to believe it's magic. But this can create an excitement to say, oh, I'd like to do something like that, and create a desire for them to be able to be more or do more. And that's part of the challenge, is to get people anywhere to realize their opportunities that they have, because many cases people are not striving for change because they're not aware that the opportunities exist for them. And so we've got to be able to demonstrate the opportunities exist, so that they'll see a path that they believe is doable.
Otherwise, when it comes to technology, people are very much ready to accept new things, to accept technology in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And they are technology on a very large scale, in a very easy manner. In villages as well, people do have mobiles with them, people do have computers with them, even people do have tablets with them. And when I have served all over Pakistan, I have worked all over Pakistan. Even I have seen girls after COVID-19 taking online classes through their computers and laptops from villages and earning. So situation not bad when it comes to using technology, but when it comes to streamline all these things with 23 crore of population, that is a challenge.
And that's exactly what results in Pakistan having the second highest number of children out of school in the world, with your 22 to 23 million children not in schools. And it's not going to change everything overnight, but the technology could enable you to make education available to a lot more people very quickly. Just having you've got here like the medical kiosk plan that for Pakistan, to be able to say, okay, create just the learning centers where walk-in. So if a family is saying, no, I need that child to be working because we're dependent on that income, then it frees it up from saying you have to learn between 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's the time you have to learn. And people can then say, I can learn at any time. And then you have to excite them about learning so that they become strivers to want to learn. Now, it's very interesting in countries like Germany, some of the European countries, the word striver is something that it's almost like you're cussing somebody out. You're saying, you're a terrible person, you're a striver. Because the feeling is strivers are people who are trying to get ahead of other people. And so when you do a resume in Germany, in the United States, you might want to put the word aggressive in your resume to show that you're a dynamic person that's going to do something for that company. If you put the word aggressive in your resume in Germany, you're a bad person. So we don't want you. So it's very interesting, but we need to go, and especially in developing countries, we have to get every young person to be a striver to be all they can be. And they have to first be able to see what they could be and believe that they could be that. And we have to do this very quickly, because when AI, right now, we have AI available to help the human evolve. But within a few years, AI is going to put a glass ceiling on top of everything, because the need for human labor to do work is going to disappear. And probably within 2 to 5 years here. Pakistan's not going to feel it as much. You will feel it in your cities. You'll feel it. Anybody any companies in Pakistan that are working on a Western style of work is going to feel it. University graduates are going to feel it. They're going to be hurt the most by AI eliminating work jobs.
In Pakistan, software companies are started struggling.
Yes, and
because most of them are linked with US or European countries.
But what's going to change is as the AI use cases become available through cloud technology, there's going to be a lot of people for a very short time that are going to have great job opportunities to implement these cloud solutions into companies. But as soon as they do that, they're no longer needed. Once they've done that, now the AI will take care of everything from there on out. But for a couple of years, there's going to be a boom in jobs for people that understand business process analysis and how to leverage the latest technology for companies. But it's only going to be short-lived for a few years. And that means that a high school senior that's in this year still in high school, but thinking next year I'm going to go to the university, the odds are that the university education will not survive long enough for them to graduate if they're going to a 4 or 6 year program. Okay, so as I said, I think the big advantage is that we have the ability to level the quality of education availability everywhere. So nobody can say, well, it's the quality of the instruction, or it's the fact that that the household from a child's age was not able to provide that child with a verbal vocabulary and so forth and so on. Those are things that we should be able to level the playing field on very, very quickly. And if we get people who to the point where they feel I'm a successful lifelong learner, I can learn anything at any time in my life, I know how to learn it. Then they can start learning for the love of learning because I'm just curious. Why is that so? Why were the pyramids built where they were? You know, how did they build the Stonehenge?
And
Whatever.
when we have universal basic income, you can choose your juice to be able to follow instead of what you have to follow to be able to get make a living.
And that's one of the big promises here for AI is not that it's going to eliminate jobs, so I got to be afraid, but it's going to eliminate the need for me to work, so I don't have to work for money. There's a very big if, because there's two paths. One path is a couple of % of people own everything and have everything, and the rest, even with the universal basic income, are at the subsistence level, and they've got no way to move up. There's no upward mobility because there's no incomes. So this is something that we've got to work out, but that's a topic for another.
That's what we get to do. We get to establish a new paradigm.
Yes.
And it takes a new paradigm design to be put forth to the people to see, it can work. Just like there were experiments with universal basic income in some places. It was written about in that not Where to Invade Next, but Utopia for Realists.
Yeah.
Look for that kind of a thing, getting those examples that this works, and that works. Boom, boom.
But the thing about it is if universal basic income is based on the couple of % that own everything paying for it, we have that eternal conflict similar to what we have between unions and company owners.
That is the main challenge.
Yep. And that's something, but it's a different topic. We had one meeting discussing this a couple of.
For example, if within 2-3 years, AI is going to take over, and it's still taking over continuously. For example, a third world country like our country, how do you foresee that what Pakistan's situation will be in 2-3 years in terms of education and job market for education?
Yeah, I think here for a while we will need mentor coaches. But if we take a look at what we expect that teacher who's becoming a mentor coach to do, it's very easy to imagine the AI will be able to do that too. The way we see with automation is you automate a level, and as soon as that level is automated, we start looking at the next level up and saying, hey, how much of that is standardized and how much of that can be automated? And this is how we've got to enterprise systems like SAP. That is probably going to happen. The question here for a country like Pakistan, I think the need is as quickly as possible to get a focus on elementary school, on the youngest level of students, so that because by age 10, they can learn enough that they will be able to continue their learning process through life. You're not going to solve anything by focusing on your university students and the like. It's too small a share of your population to make a difference. And they're too focused on how do they improve their situation in terms of income and so forth. So, but anyway, just a couple of questions, comments more, and then yes.
I put that to a man named Sam Beard. He was actually a person today about this program today, but it actually put it out to him yesterday. But he's a person who is consulted with 8 presidents. He's at that level of expertise in so many things. His gist for right now is from 0 to the age of 3 to be able to talk, sing, or whatever to a child. And then they have the like 80% more chance of being successful.
Yep.
And we need to get the AI kind of a thing, maybe for some people that don't have the ability to have a person singing or talking with them so much, to be able to communicate the amount of words that need to be able to entrain their mind, especially with the positive words, the expressive words that are enlivening and enriching people's hearts opening. And that's one of the big keys, because we are all conditioned to, I'm going to try this. It's hard and so on. Instead of having these ideas of struggle, we are not struggling anymore. We are doing it. We are changing the world for the positive right now in every thought, word, and deed. And a simple explanation is going to be a 2-paragraph thing I'm going to put into the chat now.
Yeah. One of the thoughts that I have in my mind is that maybe we should take this. We have a project idea that's targeting primary schools, and that is to take a bunch of schools, not just a couple, but a significant, maybe 10, in a state like New Jersey, schools that have never achieved 10% of their students to be at grade level, and be able to have them reach perhaps 70% of students at grade level within 1 year. And we have to realize the average for New Jersey is only 45% of students at grade level. Okay, so taking 10 of the worst schools, and there's 136 schools, by the way, that are in that category that have never achieved 10%, and having them achieve 70% in 1 year would be a media sensation, and everybody would start going crazy. And if you do 10, that's enough that we're removing the ability for people to say, well, we're doing the best we can, and the result we're getting now is the best that we can get, because now we're demonstrating that that's just not true. And that will force in the following year a lot more people to follow that model. In parallel,
get people to not be fearful of AI. We're going to show them that the positive efforts that we do in using AI, because everybody's been fed the doom and gloom of the forces that are there.
And by the way, that doesn't even take AI. That particular initiative, we're looking at Khan Academy. The only thing it takes is the idea of mastery based, of having all the 4th grade students literally go back to kindergarten and reconfirm what they've mastered, and whatever they've not mastered, filling in those gaps and those holes that could be, because we know among poorer communities, the absentee rate in schools is higher, the concentration rate is lower, the ability to work at home. So there's a whole lot of gaps that by the 4th grade that students have. By closing those and having students be at a higher level than the state averages would make a huge difference. Now, the thought is we can do the same thing here by taking some preschools. And taking some preschools and using the techniques that we described here today, being able to show these kids imagining and building a story in their minds, this story of whatever, but doing story building and learning that way, and learning the counting, because they had to integrate into their stories something about numbers. And there's so many things that can evolve out of that. And we don't have to pre-describe everything. We can basically leave it up to the students to evolve themselves, because they've now got a smart adult that they're communicating with. And so the one thing I learned when I was teaching was students will almost always live up to or expect your expectations. If you expect little from students, that's what you're going to get. If you expect a lot from your students, that's what you're going to get. I taught at the undergraduate level at Purdue University. All of my students wrote a book. They each wrote a book. Well, in groups of 2, sometimes 3. They wrote a book. So when my students had to go and they became seniors and they were going and doing job interviews, and they're being asked, well, what do you know about this subject? Well, not much, but here's the book I wrote on the subject. I can guarantee you they were not viewed in the same category as the average recent college graduate. And as a result, the initial salaries were much, much higher. The success rates. I had a student that just a couple of years after graduating was earning the equivalent of today, about $500,000 a year. It's all about raising the expectations. And if we start with the young children and having them developing the stories, if we have them asking students, how do you think we can improve education? Let me see, is she still on the call? I do not see her. Okay. We had a young lady from Italy here. It was just a recent graduate from high school. And I was just interested in the idea here of challenging students. Hey, what can you do with this technology to improve your learning process, improve you as a learner? There's a lot of YouTubes out there, by the way, that get into exactly that. At any rate, I think today I'm thank those of you who managed to stick with this. We are 2.5 hours into the and it seems like every week we seem to have these very long sessions. But I appreciate your participation and your interest. And please, if you didn't get the invitation from me direct, then try to find out from whoever gave you the information, my WhatsApp, and send me a WhatsApp so I can add you to the list so we can invite you directly. And I invite you, those of you who are not members of our Dare to Be Great club, to send me a request to join that group, and I'll add you to that group. We have a couple of subgroups on education, on advanced technologies, emerging technologies, and because there's a lot of different fields beyond what we've been talking about out there. Those of you who are under the age of 50, and I'll just warn you, if we don't come up with the AI, you're probably going to have to work for another 700 years, because you're not going to die anymore, because we're probably going to reach the longevity escape velocity before 2030, which has its own problems with it with regards to world population. But
AI is moving fast, like 3 to 10 to the power 8 meter per second square with the speed of light.
It is. There's an interesting thing. There was about 4 or 5, no, more than that now, 5 or 6 years ago, when GPT-2 came out with it wasn't ChatGPT, it was just GPT-2 came out. 2,700 scientists and engineers participated in a survey of how long they thought it would take to get to GPT-3. And they estimated, I think, 50 years. And GPT-3 came out 1 year later. So they were off 49 years.
Imagine.
And things have now gotten faster since then. I say, in the last 2 weeks, these meetings that I've had, in each of the last 2 weeks, within 2 hours of ending the meeting, there was another big announcement made on something. So this indicates how quickly it's going. But the thing about it is all of this technology, all of this change is common sense. You can sit there and say, what would be the sensible next steps to a lot of these technologies? The only thing we don't know is when, but we can see that it would make sense that this is going to be combined with that, or this can go on. I've been doing this since the 1960s, and I can tell you I've gone through generations of evolution in IT, and I see everybody, you know, when we went from mainframes to mid-range computers, and then mid-range computers to microcomputers, and microcomputers to internet, and internet now to mobile devices. And every generation has sort of been rejected by the previous generation. And so they went off and they started doing things, and they felt that they were discovering so many great new things. And I look back and saw it was just a repetition of what the previous generation had done with their level. It's the same things that are happening over and over. So once we get to abstract out and look at all these developments from the abstract perspective, we start to see that these things are not as new as we think. AI, what AI is doing is not very new. It's basic statistics and probability being
Well,
applied.
the thing is, what we get to do is understand that our vision is the thing that creates everything.
Yeah.
When we have a vision and we hold it firm,
Yes. Yeah.
called Intention and the Power of Intention. Books have been written about it.
Exactly.
And it shows that it's true, that it does work.
Mhm.
So keep the vision on the highest vision. And when we do that, boom, boom, shambo.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, I thank everybody here. Hi, Rafia. Glad you joined. Unfortunately, we're just ending the meeting now. So, but I did record it, so I will make these recordings. I've got a couple of last weeks. I got to get those all put together, and we'll make that available to everybody. So I thank everybody again for your participation, and I look forward to see you again in either next week or the week after.
Inshallah.
Yep. Thank you.
Get to love out to the world, because the world is all love and peace.
Hi, Kurt.
Bye-bye, Rahuma. Good seeing
Bye.
you.
So much.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.